Good afternoon. I'm Amy Oakley. I'm with EarthLab at the University of Washington, and this is our agenda for the afternoon. I'll start off with land acknowledgement. The University of Washington acknowledges the Coast Salish people of this land and the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. So just ask that as you are here today, wherever you are virtually, if you just take a moment to think about the ancestral lands with which you are now. I want to introduce Ben Packard as Executive Director of EarthLab. Go ahead, Ben.
Thanks, Amy, and thanks everybody for joining us today. Very excited for you to be here. This is our fourth information session. There's a lot of great energy and curiosity and interest in the innovation grants as we had hoped, and look forward to any questions you may have as we go forward. I'm going to step back first and give you a quick snapshot of what EarthLab is before Amy jumps into details about the program and about the RFP and the thinking behind it. At the highest level at EarthLab, we are connecting research to action. Our vision is an equitable, just, and sustainable world where people and planet are thriving. We do these four things that I'll talk about here in a second, but our mission is really to push on boundaries to develop these equitable and just solutions to environmental challenges. And that part of that is by connecting across sectors, which these grants hopefully do, and also academic disciplines to inspire and incentivize new partnerships. Next slide, please. We have three priorities that we identified through a planning process that we completed in 2020. The first is to activate and leverage a web of cross-boundary networks. Those are the boundaries that we throw up between ourselves at the University of Washington across disciplines, but also the boundary between community partners. And when I use the word community, I'm thinking very broadly: community organizations, NGOs, tribes, public agencies, businesses, utilities, and others that we could potentially partner with. The second thing we want to do is to drive momentum around collaboratively solving climate and its intersection with social justice. Hence the great focus of that around our RFP this year. And the third, given that we're a relatively new institute at the University of Washington, is for us to secure a stable funding model for EarthLab programs so we can do more of this kind of innovation grants and other programs going forward. Next slide, please. So we really do four things when you break it down at EarthLab. We convene cross-cutting conversations, and these sometimes are series. We've done a series on working across differences. We've done single conversations. We've partnered with faculty across the University of Washington. We recently, prior to the election, held a session on climate with the two mayoral candidates for the city of Seattle. We've brought in authors this fall. We do a lot of convening to support important conversations that cut across these differences in disciplines or sectors. We invest in innovative and interdisciplinary collaborations. These grants, we've given them out over $600,000 through two cohorts of grantees over the last couple of years, and we're looking forward to distributing another $300,000 through this round of innovation grants. The third thing we do is really support and amplify the work of many of the great centers that are in EarthLab, some of whom have been around for decades, that are doing really interesting transdisciplinary work. We support them with all of their human resources, grants and contracts administration, and all of the strategic communication support behind their great work. And lastly, we are developing programs that foster the development of individuals, professionals, students, faculties, researchers, community partners who want to work in this transdisciplinary way, but don't necessarily have the skills or experience to work in this way and work across sectors. So those are the four things that we do. Next slide, please. Here's a snapshot of the entire EarthLab universe. I mentioned that we support these centers. Those are the centers at the top of the slide here. They range from the Center for Health and Global Environment that joined EarthLab last year to the Climate Impacts Group that has been recently celebrated its 25th year in the region. We're here at the University of Washington. We've launched new centers over the last couple of years, all at the intersection of engaging with community partners and applying incredible research resources that are happening here at the University of Washington. We have three different advisory groups. We have a faculty steering committee, we have an external advisory council chaired by Sally Jewell, and we have an advisory board of deans. This small team of about 11 people at the center supports over 150 people in this EarthLab universe. And I'm happy to answer any questions that folks may have later about any of these centers in the EarthLab universe. Next slide, please. I want to stop my remarks by sharing a story about an interesting project that came through in the last round of grants for our innovation grant cycle in our second cohort. This was a really interesting collaboration between faculty in the School of Public Health, faculty that knew about measuring air quality and air pollutants, and community organizations that were asking questions about whether or not vegetation could actually benefit human health in the flight path to SeaTac Airport. This is a community-generated question and challenge that was generated by leaders of El Centro de la Raza, which operates in South King County. And they were pulling together a number of their community members to look at whether or not increasing vegetation in that flight path could potentially benefit those that have been disproportionately affected by that flight path, increased rates of asthma and other pollutants that are affecting human health. This is a really interesting collaboration. This is absolutely critically important to this community, but also when you step back and think about the hundreds of other flight paths that exist across the world, this is a research question that could be applied in many different geographies around the world. So it's local and it's global and it's generated by a community organization. So I'm going to stop here and hand it off to Amy, who will continue with a few more slides about the RFP and a couple of the details, and then we'll get into your questions. Amy, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. I have a few slides. I'm going to go over the Innovation Grants Program from an overview, talk about the request for proposals, the criteria, and about submitting the letters of intent. And so the Innovation Program, Grants Program, there's a maximum funding of per project of $75,000. We have about $300,000 total in this round, so that is looking to fund about 4 projects. The money is meant to be quick and impactful. That's why you'll see to have the project span over the 17-month period. The research is really to hit the heart of the intersection of climate change and social justice. We want it to generate new knowledge that can be used by the community and other stakeholders to mitigate or adapt to climate change while addressing those social justice considerations. It's meant to generate equitable and actionable science and knowledge. So this is science that is usable and used. Also co-creation and the partnership between the community and UW researchers. So we're the team that would be applying for the innovation grant is made up of UW researchers and community partners. So these are the non-academic partners. And we're looking for them to co-define together the research priorities from multiple perspectives. Non-academic partners can be personnel or persons associated with or from a tribe, community-led organizations, nonprofits, non-governmental organizations, city, state, federal agencies, and businesses. We're looking for interdisciplinary collaboration. So this is from within the University of Washington. We want to see at least 2 UW researchers from different disciplines. And then the last bullet is around just looking for projects that really show a potential for growth, either of the project or of the partnership. For the request for proposals, this is, we're looking to initiate a new research project that addresses climate change, and again, while intersecting with social justice considerations. So the focus is a little more narrow this year than in previous rounds to really hone in on climate change, either the adaptation or mitigation. And examples, and I'm going to read this right from the RFP. So these are examples, but not to be limited to: strategies to mitigate or adapt to climate change, impacts of climate change on people, food insecurity, health and safety risks associated with extreme heat, displacement due to sea level rise, economic impacts of climate change, policy innovations that center on community perspectives. So that is examples, but not a limiting list of examples. Number 2, projects, they can be local, regional, national, or international. Like Ben had described the project out of CTAC. We've also funded projects in Alaska, Peru, and Madagascar. The team composition I had mentioned earlier, but needs to have at least two University of Washington researchers. One of the researchers needs to have PI status. And also we're looking for a community non-academic partner and at least one UW undergraduate, graduate student, or postdoc. The PI will be responsible for ensuring compliance with all applicable federal, state, and institutional requirements. And I just want to note that the innovation grant is not under the Office of Sponsored Programs. Allowable expenses can be personnel, travel, service, and supplies, and must follow all UW policies. And then as part of being with the Innovation Grant Program is that we have the opportunity to be in a cohort with the other grantees. So we'll have about 3 to 4 grantee meetings throughout the year, or the 17 months of the project duration. And there's a mid-year report and a final report. These aren't daunting reports, they're just a few pages to provide narrative about the impact of your project. The cohort really provides the opportunity to network, to have skills development, and to provide project updates. There are 7 criteria listed in the RFP. So these are in the RFP themselves, but these are what we will evaluate the letters of intent and ultimately the full proposals on. So the first one is that does the project reflect issues at the intersection of climate change and social justice? The second is the project clearly defined research questions and research aims. Is there co-leadership from the community and the non-academic partner and researchers? Does the team have a novel mix of disciplines? And I just wanted to say, for example, art, ecology, policy, engineering, health. So how are different disciplines approaching the same project and can form a team to work on them? Is there meaningful involvement from the student or postdoc? So this is definitely something that we value at EarthLab, is having that student engagement piece. And so does the project have a meaningful involvement for the students? Are there clearly defined deliverables? And deliverables, I will just say, are is there an immediate impact for the community or non-academic partners? So examples of deliverables could be a report, an interactive website, a podcast to share the findings, or community workshops as examples. And are there clearly stated goals for sustainability or growth of the partnership or project? So is there potential for it to persist and grow? Is there a commitment to the partnership beyond the scope of this grant? Is there potential to obtain external funding to sustain the work? And does the project have a visible or is understandable to various stakeholders. So we want to know, is this project relevant for multiple communities? How can this information, the usable science, have an impact beyond the project team itself? The letters of intent are due on January 27th of 2022. We have a Google form set up, and there's a link to it from our website. But in the Google form, you'll go ahead and fill in your team composition and role, the amount of funding being requested, and then the letter of intent that would address the criteria on the previous slide is short. So 2 pages max, single spaced, no less than 12-point font, including figures. You can attach up to 3 separate single-page letters of support from the community or non-academic partner who's part of the project team. Last year, there were 43 letters of intent submitted. Of those 43, 14 were selected to submit a full proposal, and then of those 14, 4 were funded. So the full proposal, those that are selected to move on to that stage, will be due March 22nd of 2022, and we expect to announce the awards in April of 2022. So I just want to say thank you. If you have follow-up questions, we have an email address, elgrants@uw.edu. I also have drop-in Zoom office hours every Wednesday from 12:30 to 1:30. A link to those office hours are all on our website, listed here at EarthLab. And I think at this point, we'll stop the recording